Congratulations on your acceptance into Vassar College, and welcome to the Good Trouble Social Justice and Activism panel. We are so glad to have you join us today, and we have a great lineup of panelists and a number of great things that are in store for you today. I'm first going to introduce myself, and then I'm going to ask our panelists to briefly introduce themselves. My name is Donald Durham. I'm the Associate Director of Admission for Diversity Outreach. I'm now going to go ahead and pass it over to Professor Jonathan to introduce themselves, and then the rest of the panelists can briefly introduce themselves as well.
Hi, everyone. Congratulations. We're very, very excited to see you. In fact, we wish we could see you right now, but we have to live with this webinar situation for just a little bit longer, it seems. So I'm Jonathan Kahn. I am a professor of religion, Africana Studies, and American Studies at Vassar. And I'm also the director of EPI, the Engaged Pluralism Initiative, about which I'll say a lot more during this call. Should I pass it now to Ava, to Professor Woods-Pero?
Thank you, Jonathan. Hi, everyone. Greetings, welcome, and likewise, congratulations. I really look forward to meeting you on campus. And I am Eva Woods-Pero. I'm a professor of Hispanic Studies, Media Studies, participate as well in the Prison Studies Correlate program in Africana Studies. And I'm a member of REDGE, which is our Anti-Racist Equity and Justice organizing team for our Vassar College campus.
I'll hop in. Hello, everyone. Also, congratulations to you. My name is Kevin Collins. I use he, him pronouns. I am the director of the Alana Multicultural Center. So if you decide to join us, which I hope you will, you will be hearing a lot from me. But in addition to my role as director, I also serve on REDGE, which is the Anti-Racism, Equity, and Justice organizing committee here at Vassar. I will pass it along to Lisa.
Hi, everyone. Congratulations and greetings from Poughkeepsie. I'm Lisa Call, and I'm the director of the Office of Community Engaged Learning, and I'm very excited to welcome you, hopefully to Vassar in person in the coming months. And I will pass it on to Elijah Appleson.
Hello, I'm Elijah Appleson. I'm a sophomore here at Vassar. I use he, him, his pronouns. I'm a math major in prison studies correlate. And I will pass it to David. Are you here?
Actually, you can pass it back to me. I'll take it back from here. Thank you so much, Elijah. So welcome again. Congratulations on your acceptance. And the purpose of today's panel is really to introduce to you the many ways and opportunities that you, hopefully as a student that's coming to Vassar, but also our current students here, how you can engage with the many opportunities that we have to engage with social justice and activism. Social justice is a big portion of who we are as a college. And so we thought it was very fitting to kind of start this session off with basically introducing you to our culture here. Just before we get started, I just wanted to outline a couple of things. We would love to hear from you as we are going throughout the panel. And so if you want to say hello and tell us where you are from, feel free to put that in the chat function. And as the panel is going forth today, if you have any questions about anything that is going on, feel free to put that in the question and answer kind of section at the bottom of your screen. So as I mentioned, we would love to hear from you. So don't be shy about introducing yourself as it relates in the chat function. And then any question that you have, you can go ahead and put that in the question and answer section. So we're going to go ahead and get things started. And I'm going to pass it on to Professor Woods-Pero to kind of let us know about how she is involved with social justice and activism in her role here.
Thank you so much, Donell. I really appreciate that. Can you hear me okay? Okay, wonderful. So greetings, everyone. I was asked to talk about how my pedagogy and curriculum are in conversation with social justice movements. And I wanted to share with you a few guiding principles that I tend to go by that inspire me. And I want to share those with you. But before I do that, I want to actually talk about the students at Vassar. I want to talk to you about our students. And I want to begin and end with them because they are truly the ones who inspire me. And without them, our activism wouldn't exist. Um, I have some memories that when I was preparing my remarks for today, I was thinking back to these rooms for events that students had organized, and they were absolutely packed. They were standing room only, and people there was no room. People were sitting in the aisles. They were out in the hallways. People were recording them for their friends. Students had invited people like Jesse Hagopian from the teachers who had been leading the teacher strikes out in Portland and Seattle, Green Party candidate, I remember, migrant justice speakers, Black Lives speakers. And I was just so struck by how effective they were at organizing, how they managed their time and their coursework and everything that they were doing. And I just want to emphasize how much respect I have for them, for my students in the past, my present students, and my future students. And I want to emphasize that respect because more than anyone, they understand how serious the state of things in the world is. They understand that we are facing economic and ecological devastation, a world of violent divisions, one of racial and gendered dehumanization, manufactured death, and a world in which we increasingly defer our thinking, seeing, and decision-making to machines. And they are the ones, because they understand this, they need us to acknowledge that this is the situation. And they need us to make our curriculum and our courses relevant so that they can have the tools to be able to have a fighting chance in this world. So I want to say that everything I'm presenting today could not have been done without my students. So I want to go ahead and start with some guiding principles. Like I said, I'm going to share my screen. And so, okay. Apologies. Transparency moment, tech slowness here on my end. So some of the principles that have guided my work and these are principles that I have gotten from others that I'm now sharing with my students through the courses and through the initiatives that we do on campus. And by the way, this is a photo of our students. We're at a Poughkeepsie mural downtown here where we had just met with a nonprofit who advocates for housing and migrant justice. And so the first guiding principle is to do the difficult but necessary work of undoing racism, we need to ground ourselves in mindful and healing practices. The second one is if you want to be a part of social change like police reform or abolition, look first to the people who have suffered disproportionately from police violence and killings. Listen to and learn from them. Let them be your guides. And remember that activism builds on the work and labor of others and is part of a process. There is no quick fix, and we are definitely not the first to come to this work. The third principle is work collaboratively and collectively. The fourth, decolonize your thinking. And I'll talk a little bit more about that later, but for now, challenge your assumptions, especially around established hierarchies that you see as natural. So mindfulness, which I practice in both of these classes featured here, these are flyers that the students also see when they sign up for classes. Mindfulness is simply about taking a deep breath. And the kind of things I say are the following. Let's bring mindfulness into our breathing and ground ourselves in self-compassion so that we can have compassion for others. How can we even begin to undo racism, for example, if we can't access an inner sense of existence and well-being? Looking into someone else's face and taking our deep histories and our will to connect is a practice that Rhonda McGee calls I see you, and it draws on the South African concept of Ubuntu, which says, I am because you are, and because you are, I am. Being aware that our very existence and well-being depend on another's existence and well-being means that we understand that we impact one another. In this first class, Building Inclusive Communities with Latinx Poughkeepsie, which I teach with the community activists, we structure the course according to how we believe inclusive community can best emerge. And we begin with nurturing this very mindfulness in ourselves and our relationships. And we develop trust and intimacy through check-ins and weekly meetings of small groups. And it is only then, after we've done that groundwork of mindfulness, that we move to proactively engage dynamics around social identity and power. And at that point, we explore case studies of effective local community change. Then students develop blueprint strategies for community organizing around issues that have been identified as priorities by the local Latinx community. And we do this through grounding our learning in the perspectives and experiences of local organizers whom we meet with each week, both on campus and in the city of Poughkeepsie. So listening and learning from stories and histories of seasoned community activists and experts is also foundational to anti-racism, equity, and learning, which I taught in collaboration with the Dean of Student Growth and Engagement, Wendy Mirage Taylor, in response to the groundswell of uprising for Black Lives last summer. COVID had hit, and so we had to get creative. We teamed up with Professor Khan, who's here with me today, and Professor Yasmin Sadula to format a speaker series that features as many angles as possible on the issue of Black Lives Matter and abolition. The series allows students to dialogue with an activist mother, Tawanda Jones, from Baltimore's We Are More Than Hashtags and Body Bags. We hear from radical anti-incarceration academics, trans abolitionists, poverty scholars, Native justice and memory justice folks, members of our local Black Lives Matter chapter, and members of the New Jim Crow Action Network. And all of these are on the poster on the right-hand side, the yellow poster. In between these encounters, my students participated in facilitated workshops on racial literacy, led by folks such as Kevin Collins, who's here with us today as well. So the final projects that students do for courses focused on racial justice are inherently collaborative, which is my third guiding principle, mine and many others, as I was saying. For the anti-racism class, and that's what is featured here in this slide, one student interviewed a Black mother and a Black teacher on their experiences with racism in a predominantly local white school district and published a podcast in our campus anti-racist newsletter. This was particularly moving because part of the racial abuse that these women had faced in this district was not ever having a place to tell their story, not being believed, not being heard, and not being helped. For building inclusive communities, we had a ton of outgrowth projects in collaboration with local community, a particular local Latinx activist in her community. And our students helped organize and run one of the City of Poughkeepsie's first facilitations in Spanish. And you can see that here. That was on our campus a couple of years ago, actually. And through that facilitation, where they spoke to the community and had the community on those placards, we had themes and such. We developed a community needs survey based on the input from community members. And that was conducted by in Spanish by our students. Our students also helped conduct a community, they also collaborated, with Marist College students and professors to promote the 2020 survey amongst the Spanish-speaking community in the Hudson Valley. And that was really important because that's how our communities get social services, is through being counted in the census. And in 2010, at least in this area, we had not had a very good count. And sometimes we publish articles with our students. Here's an article that a student of mine and I published in the local newspaper on migrant justice, although they changed the title, which is not the title that we gave them, but oh well. And finally, through independent studies, students attended and they will hopefully continue to attend the 2.5-day workshop Undoing Racism. And what they did after the workshop is they organized follow-up meetings for credit through these independent studies. They led those meetings, and out of all of those meetings was born the Anti-Racist Equity and Justice group that Kevin and I were both referring to. And then finally, a last guiding principle. What does decolonizing mean? It means understanding how your thinking might be colonized by hierarchies such as North versus South, former colonizers as being inherently superior versus formerly colonized being inherently inferior, ideas like that. It could be ideas about how we've internalized stereotypes, or even how we fail to see whiteness as a race that benefits from anti-Black racism. With my last example, I want to talk to you about how we've been trying to decolonize our thinking around language acquisition and knowledge production. So what we do in the modern language departments. This program is called Conversations Unbound, and it's a not-for-profit org that was founded by and continues to be run by Vassar students. We call it CU, and CU empowers forcibly displaced individuals as paid online Arabic, Spanish, French, or German tutors for our classes. And this is here in the slide, we have a picture of the website and then a picture of some of our Spanish tutors. So what we hope to do is, by privileging the knowledge and expertise of our tutors, we try to reimagine hierarchies and traditional power dynamics so that students can learn from each other by engaging in meaningful dialogue, which helps students practice their language and also enables our tutors to increase their agency and economic stability. Shifting from thinking of language learning as a competitive, marketable skill, and instead seeing it as a way to create meaning with others, is what we hope to be a decolonizing gesture in the area of language acquisition. So our students have really loved these exchanges and have asked us to expand the program. And I think that's because the conversations they have with their tutors really open up new worlds and get them thinking about migration and language and belonging in much more complex ways. So in closing, when I was asked to answer the question, how do students grapple with these subjects while in your class? That was something I was asked to say here. And I realized it has a very easy answer. And the way that they grapple with these subjects is, well, they're the ones who have asked for these classes. They're the ones who have asked for this pedagogy. And I wouldn't be doing this if it weren't for them. I would be doing it elsewhere, but maybe not on campus. But they are the ones who have been pushing us and telling us what they need. This is definitely student driven. And I think that's because they see clearly that they have a right to dignity and to a better world. And they want their curriculum to reflect that. And they know that they're going to be the ones that are going to change this world. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Professor Woods-Pero, so much for kind of informing us on how social justice and activism is embedded within our curriculum. At this time, we're going to go ahead and transition to Professor Jonathan Kahn, who is going to talk about the Engage Pluralism Initiative program here. And as I mentioned, as we are going throughout the program, please feel free to put any of your questions, comments, or any kind of impressions that you're having inside of the chat function. All right, and now Professor Kahn, you can take it away.
Great, greetings everybody. Thank you, Ava. It's so amazing to hear the work you do and the way you work with students. I can't echo enough the idea that that all of us begin with the energies and that our students bring. And I don't know, I guess I just sit here and see Kevin and Lisa, and I don't know Elijah. Elijah, nice to meet you, who's a student. And I really just think about how much gratitude I have at having colleagues like you all doing this work. It really, I mean, for the people who are on the call, you know, that, I mean, Vassar is a place where your voice will be heard, and your interests will be nurtured, and your passions will be taken up by other people's energies. I've been here now for 15 years, which is sort of scary to say. Ava you and I are almost, I think, like at the same. I've been here for the same time, and I have to admit that I'm more excited today about teaching and working here than I was when I started, because of the sort of work on the varieties of activism that that our students and our faculty and our administrators are interested in engaging with. So I sort of want to begin with sort of this emerging land acknowledgement that many of us on campus feel really is sort of an important way to think about the college. And so you'll be coming to Poughkeepsie, and Poughkeepsie is land that was a homeland of Native American communities. And so we sort of upon the homelands of the Wappinger and Stockbridge and Munsee and Delaware peoples, communities with an enduring connection to this place. And acknowledging this fact is just the beginning. To that end, we pledge to build and sustain relationships with Native communities, to expand opportunities for Native students and faculty leadership on campus, and to collaborate with Native nations to know better the indigenous peoples, past and present, who care for this land. And as Ava said, Ava introduced the language of decolonizing. You know, I think all of us are learning about this. I say this. This is so. If I'm going to be honest, like this is my first. I just became the director of EPI, which I will explain in a moment. And so this is my first public speaking opportunity, and really this is the first time I've read a land acknowledgement like this. And you know, and for me, doing this is an act of acknowledgement of ancestors, and an act of gratitude, and an act of interrelatedness, and an act of acknowledging who comes before us. And it's that sort of spirit that really, for me, just sort of energizes my work. So I sort of want to begin with that. Now, what is EPI? So I'm going to put in the chat. Actually, let me share my screen. I can share my screen, right? After a year, this one would think I'd be better, and I'm just not. Hold on, I got to get the right screen to share. So there we go. Okay, so EPI. So let's begin with what engaged pluralism is. And engaged pluralism is this notion that difference is crucial to who we are. And it's actually an essential part of what it is to build a strong community. What's pluralism? Well, pluralism is the conviction that in order to understand difference, in order to be different together, we need to create contexts where people who are different from each other can talk. And that's crucial, creating those contexts, creating practices of talking about difference, among difference, between differences, is crucial for the well-being of our community. And so the Engaged Pluralism Initiative started 4 years ago. I have the incredible honor of becoming the second director of EPI. My genius colleague, Candace Lowe Swift, who, if you come to campus, you will meet, who teaches in anthropology, was the first director. And basically, this really broad, very octopus-like initiative that's dedicated to building community on campus and creating contexts in which inclusion and equity and belonging are fostered. And so we sort of have three rules that we go by. One is that we always do our work together. And while there's absolutely a place for affinity groups of all sorts, affinity groups among faculty, among students, among people's races and ethnicities, among administrators. What EPI did 4 years ago was offer something that was somewhat new at Vassar, where these various groups, faculty, administrators, and students and staff, would come together in ways that at Vassar was at the time rather unusual. That EPI introduced to the campus these community contexts in which we could, by which we live. We could talk about the hierarchies which shape our work, and by bringing them to sort of awareness, we could do some work at lessening them, at changing them. And again, I think sort of the language of decolonizing, like it was a decolonizing gesture. What does it mean to talk with someone who has a different power status than you? That's the sort of work we do in EPI. The second rule is that everybody is welcome. Absolutely everybody. Each of us is needed for building our community. And then finally is this conviction that goes through EPI, and it's hard work, and it's work that requires persistence, and it's the sort of work Donnell, I think, you named this night Good Trouble after the great John Lewis, who spoke about always getting into good trouble. That's what John Lewis's life was about. And EPI is sort of pursues and follows that same idea, which is that it's really only getting into context and community and creating trouble at times, but the trouble that comes from saying, hey, we want things to look this way, we want things to work differently, we want other people's voices, my voice, someone else's voice to be heard. We want contexts and communities in which if someone says I'm not being heard, that they know that they're going to come to a place where they will be heard. And that's what the Engaged Pluralism Initiative, sort of our North Star, our set of North Stars, I suppose, are about. So what do we do practically? Well, we have working groups, and you can, I'll put in the chat so you can explore this on your own at your leisure. Wait a second. How do I get the chat? If someone who has access to the chat, drop it in there. I'm usually pretty good at dropping a link in a chat, but not today. So the first level of things is we have working groups, and we have 6 working groups at this point, and they touch as many parts of the campus as we can imagine. So we have a working group that thinks about the arts, and thinks about public space in which artistic expression is the thing that allows voice to be heard, and that brings people together in viewing and reacting to and in creating art. We have the Bridging Campus and Local Communities Group, which actually Ava was the chair of for several years. And Lisa, who's on this call, was the chair of just up to this last year, in which the group comes together. And again, all of our working groups are made up of faculty, students, staff, and administrators in the same group. And the group comes together and creates projects that try to bridge our campus community with the Poughkeepsie community, and indeed even sometimes beyond. So for example, and this is actually, the story here is actually, I think, really wonderful. So the current Bridging Campus and Local Community Group is actually being chaired, and it's not chaired by a set of students. And it's not even being chaired. They call themselves the facilitators of the group. And actually we have Lisa. So Lisa was the previous chair of the working group. And it was through Lisa's leadership and guidance that they decided that they did not like the sort of hierarchical dynamics of a chair. They wanted to have facilitators. And indeed, they wanted it not to be an administrator or a faculty member. They wanted it to be a student. And so this group now is working on a video project that brings together local Poughkeepsie high school students and families to think about and share and engage with learning. And it's this, sort of wonderful burgeoning project. And it's just an example of the way EPI allows people to sort of like, we sort of like to say that EPI is, EPI's work begins when the working groups come together and you sit around a table and you begin to ask each other and yourself, like, what work do we want to do? And how does the idea of the person across my table sort of, spur me to think about the work that I want to do? And it emerges very organically. We have a group that we like to call it our capacity group, that thinks about things like mindfulness and things like practices of identity. These folks are now currently engaged in a project they're calling 400 Years of Inequity, in which they've created a timeline, or in which they've sort of engaged with actually the New School of Social Research in New York City to present the timeline that has been developed. It's a US timeline about social inequity. And with the anticipation, though, that in the coming year, we're going to create a Vassar timeline of inequity, so we can begin to take a look at our own history. We have a global studies and campus group. We have an inclusive pedagogy and curriculum group, which I've been involved in, and a Life at Vassar group. And you can explore those as you as you would like. I just want to emphasize a couple of things. So the inclusive pedagogy and curriculum group, within that group, we decided to start really Vassar's first student-teacher pedagogical partnership, where every semester, and this semester we have 12 student-faculty pairs, where students sit in on faculty's classes, and each week, and the students are trained, and the students talk about or observe the faculty's class in coordination with the things that the faculty member is interested in. So I've done this now, this is my third time. I'm constantly talking about the way gender is functioning in class. I want to hear from what my student partner is observing. Thinking about race, thinking about who is speaking and who isn't speaking, thinking about the way certain assignments work and certain assignments don't. I can't tell you how valuable it's been during this COVID time when I've had to do a lot of online teaching, and it feels a little bit like actually what I'm doing now, which is like shouting into a screen, and I don't know how anybody's reacting to things. And so I have a student who can help me out with that. And so the working groups really form the core of what we do, but we also have sort of things called project groups that really pick up other energies and other desires that students and faculty have on campus. So I just want to highlight one of the project groups. Oops, let me go back here. That I'm really just in awe of. So our students, and this had all been done by students. Our students have put together, here we go, a conference that is going to be happening, I guess, in 4 weeks, called Genealogies of Critical Ethnic Studies. And a set of about 5 students have worked together to build a Zoom conference in which Vassar is going to really, for the first time, to have sort of a public conversation about the category of ethnic studies. And, I don't assume any of you on this call to necessarily know what that is. This conference is, I think, an invitation to all of us at Vassar, most of whom also are not truly well-versed in the category of ethnic studies. And we're going to have this sort of wonderful conversation instead of workshops that includes poetry workshops, includes mindfulness workshops, and then also includes some really wonderful scholars in conversation with students on panels to talk about the sort of the discipline of ethnic studies. And it's precisely this work that the students are initiating that is going to produce change in the way Vassar goes about creating its understanding of disciplines. And it's this sort of work that really, we at Vassar would sort of, want to, invite you into. let me see. The last thing I want to say is that, as you can see here, there are these items called igniter pitches, and EPI Thrive, and these are vehicles for people who have an idea to come to us, to come to EPI and say, hey, I would really like, I really do this thing. I need some help. I need some help in terms of how do I build community to do this? I need some help in terms of some finances to do it. And it's out of EPI Thrive and the Igniter pitch that the college has sort of, been the incredible site of a semester of storytelling and narrative projects. It's been the site of circle practice, which is a sort of restorative justice practice of conflict resolution that is now sort of a fire on campus. And there are multiple circles going on where people are learning about each other's background and how everybody situates themselves. And so it's this, at heart, EPI is, and we sort of like to say, like, my work, our work, is to figure out how to bring into reality the sort of dreams and sometimes stray thoughts and hopes and wishes that our students and our faculty and administration staff have on campus. And it's really this, so we have over 150 people who are participating in Engage Pluralism. We have some new initiatives on the horizon, including sort of a project on trying to do a better job of acknowledging and reckoning with Vassar's own history. And it's these sort of projects that incoming students at Vassar are invited into, and you'll find here with us within EPI sort of a community that's really ready to listen and ready to act and ready to begin to build a campus that reflects sort of new possibilities for what it is to be. So with that, I think I'm done with my my time is up. Let me please pass it on to, I'm not sure who I pass it to.
I think it's me.
Yes.
Cool. So I'm going to share my screen if I can. Yes.
Well, let me stop share. Sorry, Kevin.
That's okay. Let's see here. All right, can everyone see this? Cool. If anyone is familiar with the Black church, which is what I was raised and reared in, you will know and recognize this term that a pastor would say, I won't be before you long, which is typically a lie, but this time it's the truth. I will not be before you long. Again, my name is Kevin Collins. I use he, him pronouns, and I serve as the director of the Alana Student Multicultural Center. And the staff is made up of myself, the director. We also have an administrative fellow, which is a Vassar alum, Ivana Guerra. She couldn't be with us tonight. And we also have an administrative assistant and 10 student interns. And ununique to what anything you'll hear about activism and student voice and student power at Vassar, the Alana Center was created out of student activism and student unrest. So let's get into it. Like I mentioned, the center was kind of founded out of unrest. There was a sit-in 1969, a group of Black women. At that time, Vassar was still an all-women's college, but a group of Black women occupied and conducted a sit-in of one of the administrative buildings and demanded that there be a center to support Black students, and that there also be faculty hired that support Black students and curriculum that also spoke to and recognized and mirrored Black students and Black life. So Kendrick House was founded out of the takeover of Maine in Kendrick House, which is still on campus. It's still a building that exists across the street from the main campus. It served as both the African American Cultural Center as well as sort of the initial framework of what would be Africana studies. After the main takeover in 1969, the Alana Center, or the Kendrick House, or Afro-American Cultural Center, kind of went through a few different iterations. So in 1970, it became the Urban Center for Black Studies. In 1976, it became the Intercultural Center and was housed in the basement of Lathrop House, which is one of the houses on campus. In 1990, there was another sit-in, and students again demanded expanded resources for not just Black students, but students of color more broadly. So the Intercultural Center came to be, and plans for a larger building was made. And the construction of where we sit now is sort of, you all haven't been on campus, but we're kind of behind admissions and close to the Powerhouse Theater. And all of that came out of student voice and student demand. In 1998, the Intercultural Center was renamed at the Alana Center. So yeah, that brings us to today. Our mission is to create an affirming, developmental, and welcoming space that centers students of color through community building, events, programs, workshops. The Alana Center seeks to make Vassar a more open, welcoming, inclusive, and justice-oriented campus. Again, as I mentioned, the staff is made up of myself, an admin assistant, an administrative fellow, and 10 student interns. I'm going to pause here because this is where most of our activism happens, right? As you've heard, it's all led by students on campus. And any office that is doing any sort of activism, it's always student-led, right? So these are our student organizations that are affiliated with the Alana Center. I think there are about 14 or 15, and there are a couple who are budding, so they're not listed here, but these are all of the organizations that are affiliated, and they each do different work on campus and off campus, and have all been active in the local community and doing definitely activism at the national level as well. These are some of the signature events. Alana Fest, we do Heritage Month programming, so celebration of Latinx Heritage Month, Native American and Indigenous Heritage Month, Black History Month, and upcoming is the Asian and Asian American Heritage Month. We do study breaks on Thanksgiving. We partner with, we have a lot of faculty engagement, a lot of faculty partnerships, both through our student-led programming, but also myself, I partner with a lot of faculty across campus. And a spring block party. So you'll see that a lot of our programming is both social, cultural, but we also do responsive programming, right? So when sort of these big events happen globally and nationally, we pull together students, administrators, faculty, to not just talk about and debrief and breathe it out, but also talk about what's next and what can we do next as students, as administrators, and as faculty. These are some of the resources offered: office hours. I conduct the Alana Leadership Academy, which is just a leadership development program for all of our student leaders. The space is a resource. We have a beautiful community room. We have multiple conference rooms in our building, a full kitchen, and again, study rooms as well. But I also want to go back to this list of student orgs, because I have a few examples. Since I've been here, this is my 3rd year at Vassar. And a few of these student orgs have kind of stuck out to me as being extremely active, especially in the Poughkeepsie City community, right? So our Black Students Union, I feel like it was last year, a little bit before March, in January, but there was a police brutality incident in the city of Poughkeepsie involving 2 young Black girls. And they galvanized and they organized around these 2 girls and their mom to really bring that case to light, right? And expose the campus community to what happened, but also work to get folks involved, right? Taking folks to the courthouse to protest, right? Bringing those 2 girls and their mom to campus to tell their story, and also working with community organizations and council people. And they were extremely hands-on and really organizing around this family and supporting this family. Another one of these groups have been instrumental in partnering and collaborating with the Students for Justice in Palestine. They brought some speakers to campus as well. And then Jonathan talked about VASAM, right? It's a student-run project, right? That's getting Vassar to think about what it would look like to bring critical ethnic studies to Vassar. And they were teaching a course. They were using their time, their free time that they don't have much of, to teach Asian American studies. So yeah, that's the type of students that are here, that are present at Vassar. They're passionate, and they hold each other, but also Vassar administration, faculty, staff, they hold us all accountable, right? And if we're not living up to and doing what we say we're going to do, we hear from them. So that's just an overview of the center and the work that we do to foster and create space for these students to be as active as they are. It definitely doesn't only happen through these student organizations. It happens all over campus, right? And it's a community and collaborative process. I think that might be all. Follow us on Instagram, VC Alana Center, Facebook, Vassar Alana, where you can learn more about our student organizations and the work that they're doing. Thank you, and I'm going to pass it along to Lisa. Let me stop sharing.
Thank you so much, Kevin. And now we're going to go ahead and pass it along to Lisa Call. And as I mentioned a little bit earlier, I see that we have, if there's any questions that are coming up as you are hearing about the many different opportunities to engage, definitely feel free to put that in the Q&A section. And in just a few moments, we'll give you an opportunity to pose those questions to our panelists, and they will answer them. So now I'm going to go ahead and pass it on to Lisa.
Thank you. And I'm just going to put this on present. Can everybody hear me? See my screen? Maybe. Okay. I'm going to move this down over here. Perfect. Okay, so greetings from Poughkeepsie. I am Lisa Call from the Office of Community Engaged Learning. We are very much a place-based office. So I want to begin first by acknowledging the Lenape, Mohican, and Wappinger, upon whose land Vassar is located. And I also want to acknowledge the named and unnamed enslaved people of Poughkeepsie on whose enforced labor this area was built. So the name Poughkeepsie comes from the Wappinger tribe and translates roughly as the reed-covered lodge by the Little Water Place. And should you make the decision to come here, I would love to show you where this place is located. Okay. Have to figure out. Okay, so as I said, I run the Office of Community Engaged Learning. What we do at the Office of Community Engaged Learning is we build reciprocal relationships with community partners to provide our students with experiential opportunities. And these opportunities take the forms of internships or volunteer opportunities, and they are mentored by faculty. And they really help the students to integrate and enhance classroom learning with real life experience. And our goal is to empower our students to become engaged citizens while supporting the work of our partners and investing in our collective future. That is in our local community here or in the various communities that you might come from. The idea really is to sort of provide a template if you would, for a life that you're going to lead ultimately, which is going to be one we hope will provide you the tools for, which will be one of meaning and purpose. And really the office, the principles of the office is grounded on are the idea of praxis and this whole idea that it is only in connection with each other, in learning about each other. And the reason why we're coming to do this is because we are of interest to each other, to paraphrase the poet Elizabeth Alexander, that we can bring about any kind of change. And this is where knowledge is also built. It is not only produced in the academy, but it is produced elsewhere, especially in our communities. And it is in pursuit of this, in pursuit of each other, getting to know each other through doing, not just thinking, that we produce knowledge. So this is really sort of where our philosophy of community engaged learning is built. The idea is that you have classroom learning, and then you have a community that you live in and that you will be a part of. And very often there are ideas that you're learning in the classroom, but these sometimes only come to light, or you have the opportunity to really understand what's happening you're reading about in the classroom when you engage with them in the real world. And in doing so, our community partners are really in some ways co-teachers in the process. And so again, you're interrogating the whole idea of where is knowledge produced, and how might you better understand what's happening in the classroom, and how might you ultimately bring about change. But this is something that we proceed with a little bit of caution, because I think there is a preparatory step before leading towards activism. And I think that's what the Office of Community Engaged Learning is geared towards, is sort of this critical raising of consciousness, if you would, of thinking about who brings about change, why it's brought about, who gets to decide what the change is going to be, and really to do this with communities rather than to communities. So there are various pathways. Oh, I didn't know I was so fancy. This is going to come up one by one. Okay, so one is doing community engaged learning. These are small 4-credit, deeply mentored individual experiential opportunities that you can have. So you're a student who's working with a community organization, and we have relationships with several community organizations in Poughkeepsie and in the Dutchess area and in New York City. Poughkeepsie is interesting, a very interesting place, because it is the capital of Dutchess County. So students have access to opportunities that you might not have in another small town, as it were. And then there's also the proximity to New York City. But the opportunities in this area are just immensely rich. So in any given semester, we have partnerships with between like 100 to 150 community organizations that students work with. Then there's the opportunity of the intensive. Okay, so this is a novel curricular feature that introduced in Vassar, I think about a year ago. It's novel and very exciting, I think, because these are opportunities, and I think Professor Woods-Pero, actually, one of her classes might have been intensive. I'm not sure if you would characterize that as that. But these are small group classes that are deeply mentored. Some of them can be community engaged. And some of them are student driven. So the students might come up with an idea for a class with the faculty member and then develop it. And then other forms of civic engagement that you can take are with Vassar Votes, which is an organization through the Office of Community Engaged Learning, which tries to ensure that every student has access to vote. Volunteering with various local organizations, and then through Hudson Valley Mappers, where students use the power of GIS really to do community geography, to bring issues to highlight them. Currently, students are working on creating an equity trail of the area. If you have questions, I would love to field them. My email is li.call or just ocel@vassar.edu. But the reason why I'm going to cut short right now is because I actually have 2 students who are going to talk to you about what they've done with the Office of Community Engaged Learning. And, you know, much as I'd love to hear the sound of my voice, they really are the real deal. So it is my great pleasure to introduce to you Sarah Oskane Miller and then Elijah Appleson. But Sarah, take it away. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Lisa. Hi, everybody. I'm Sarah. I use she, her pronouns. I'm a sophomore at Vassar. I'm from Brooklyn, New York, and I'm an American Studies major, and I'm pursuing correlates, which are versions of minors in Hispanic Studies and Prison Studies. So now that you know a little bit about me, CEL, so Community Engaged Learning, has been a very significant part of my Vassar experience so far, and I'm really excited to talk a bit today about the organizations that I've engaged with, how I got involved in them, what kind of work I've done, and then also some thoughts about what I've learned from these experiences and how they connect to my academic world. Yeah, so I first learned about the opportunity to do work with local social justice organizations for academic credit through CEL from my Vassar tour guide, which is something that really interested me about the school. And in high school, I had done work on political campaigns in my area and participated in my school's diversity alliance. It was invested in criminal justice reform work. And so while I knew that I definitely wanted to further explore these areas that I was really passionate about in college, and that Vassar could support me with that, I still wasn't totally sure about what it would mean to engage in work with the Poughkeepsie community, which is a community that I hadn't been a part of, or how accessible these opportunities would be. But the second part of the question regarding accessibility was quickly answered when my ultimate Frisbee team captain mentioned during my first semester that she was participating in a grassroots fundraising drive with Nobody Leaves Mid-Hudson. And she just very casually asked me, I think over a team dinner, like, hey, want to get involved? And she told me that Nobody Leaves Mid-Hudson is a grassroots organization that builds power by organizing people around issue-based and electoral campaigns, such as keeping ICE out of courts, healthcare for all, and housing justice, among a bunch of others. And so obviously I said, yes, I definitely want to get involved with this amazing work. And so then I volunteered for the drive that winter, discovered that I really loved the people and the work and that I was growing a lot, and then continued working with them for 8 months. And I participated in 3 fundraising drives, first as a team member, then as a team leader, and then as a team coach, and also as a summer intern. And so I got a lot of different experiences and perspectives, which was super cool. And I don't have time to go super in depth into this work or into the org, but I learned a lot about organizing and relationship building and the political landscape in the Hudson Valley, and would definitely be happy to talk more about this if anybody has any questions. Okay, so now the organization that I'm currently working with is Queers for Justice, which is a branch of the Newburgh LGBTQ Center. And I've been working with them since this summer, when one of my friends posted on her Instagram story about the organization and was like, DM if you want to get involved. And I DM'd her and showed up at a meeting, and I didn't really know anybody, and it was very much out of my comfort zone. And I was like, I don't know if I should even be here. And like the first couple meetings were like a little strange and uncomfortable. But like now it's so cool looking back on that moment because I've built such incredible relationships with my supervisor works there and with the other people on my team. Yeah, so to give you a sense a bit about what we do or what I do with them, as a research intern, I help Queers for Justice with their mission to address the disparity of over-policing, the criminal justice system, and incarceration of Black and Brown LGBTQ+ identified people in the Hudson Valley. And so it's a big mission. What I focused on during my first semester was doing research on county and city budgets through the lens of criminal justice reform. So I focused specifically on mental health and youth services in Dutchess County. And then I also attended council meetings to get a sense of what the conversation was like in the area. And met with local legislators. Quick side note, my history professor that semester is a legislator in Dutchess County. And so I showed up to some council meeting and saw her there, and I was a little taken aback, but it ended up being a really cool connection because I was able to connect the center with my professor and just have a lot of in-depth conversations with her, which was really special. And then I also conducted research on how to decarcerate the Dutchess County Jail, life sentencing policy. And then this semester, we started off doing political power mapping. So that entailed a public information session for whoever wanted to come about different politicians in the area. And then right now I'm working on the Justice Roadmap, which is a package of bills that combat the criminal and immigration legal systems that oppress and criminalize Black and Brown communities. So this isn't something that Queers for Justice has come up with, but is something that we're supporting. And so a lot of the work is in coalitions, which is really wonderful to see how different groups can bring different things to the table and build relationships across different areas and different identities. And it's actually super exciting because the area that I'm focusing on is ending the war on drugs and decriminalizing mental illness. And the Marijuana Regulation Taxation Act actually just passed super recently. And so it's really wonderful, just to feel connected to that work. Quickly, just some final thoughts on this experience. In the college classroom, it is very easy to theorize and criticize and come up with grand solutions in a way where the human experience is alienated from the learning. And it makes sense why that happens, because our knowledge is often drawn from the academic sources that are deemed legitimate by people in power, and perfection can often feel like the goal that we're supposed to accomplish. But that totally is turned on its head through community engaged learning, or my experience specifically with Queers for Justice. I work, closely with formerly incarcerated people, like people who are addicts, people who have formerly been involved with sex work, systems impacted people. And those are the voices that are centered, and those are the people in leadership positions. It's really wonderful to be in a space that knowledge is drawn from lived experience. And I'm still figuring out what my role in all of this is as a Vassar student who isn't always systems impacted. But I am just so grateful for the opportunity to learn and grow and just meet really wonderful people and have my academic experience enriched by community engaged learning.
Thank you so much, Sarah. That was great. Very glad to kind of get your perspective there. Now we have one more student who we're going to get his perspective on. So Elijah, take it away.
Hey, thank you. Is it okay if I share my screen? Wonderful. Yeah, so I'm going to be, like Sarah, talking about justice and activism at Vassar College. Yeah, so I, like some students here, but not every student, am from the Hudson Valley. I went to high school in Poughkeepsie. I went to Poughkeepsie Day School. And while I was there, I really found myself in the community a lot. I was working with Hudson River Housing with their River Haven Youth Transitional Shelter. And I was also working with the Youth Advisory Board in the city of Poughkeepsie and many other programs in the city. And that's really when I fell in love with the city of Poughkeepsie and wanted to work in the community. So realizing that, I decided that I wanted to stay local and go to Vassar College to continue my work in the community, but also to study mathematics. Yeah, so I didn't know that I wanted to do community engaged learning or anything like that till I went and spoke with Lisa Call in January. So in January, I went to her and I was like, I'm really interested in mathematics, but I'd also like to get back into the community. And she suggested that I work with Engine. So Engine is the End the New Jim Crow Action Network. And they're a local like grassroots organization working to end mass incarceration locally, statewide, and really nationally and internationally. So they have a program, a Court Watch program, where they go into local courts and take statistics on identity, sentences and whatnot. And so I thought I'd be really interested in that because I'm a math major. So when I started doing that, I thought it was going to be great, but sadly I didn't have the class time to go into courts or take the statistics. So instead I began working with Engine just as a normal intern for them. So this threw me into a place where I felt very uncomfortable and I knew nothing about. I was writing policy for them. I was writing op-eds. I was writing legislation for them. Things that me as a math major had never done in my life and never thought I'd like. But I found that I absolutely loved it. It was the work that I wanted to be doing. So after that, I was like, okay, I really love this work. I wonder where I can take it. So Vassar has a community fellows program where they allow you to do the same type of community work with a nonprofit organization in the city of Poughkeepsie with funding from Vassar. So realizing that this is a direction I wanted to take my academic path, I applied to the community fellowship and got it to work with Engine. So with that experience came basically one of the most incredible experiences of my life. I was able to organize rallies, as you can see on the left, and that one is specifically with the family of Maurice Gordon Jr., a Poughkeepsie resident who was killed by police in New Jersey. I was able to organize 3 rallies. I spoke at Common Council meetings like Sarah did. That was a large thing that I continue to do. I created a court watching handbook to make it easier for college students and people from around the area to court watch. I wrote countless essays on policing and on the prison system locally and especially the effect of the coronavirus. And I had the opportunity to work with organizations like NYCLU, which I have right here, Justice for the Wrongfully Incarcerated. I was working directly with the mom of one of the kids in the Central Park 5 who were arrested in New York City. I got to work with the Dutchess County legislators to plan a protest, actually. I was able to work with Equitable Futures and just a whole bunch of organizations, all because Vassar was funding me and they were letting me kind of do whatever I wanted to create an impact in my community, the community I grew up in, which is an incredible experience. Next slide. Yeah, so here are a few things I created. I did a lot of social media work. If you want to follow us, we're at Engine Poke on Instagram, Facebook, and on Twitter. I wrote a bunch of essays, as you can see, and that's the handbook. Okay, so this work led me to continue working with Engine. Right now, I'm actually a curator for them, which is like a leadership where we go over different laws and whatnot and decide if we want Engine to sign on to them. But I'm also working with a bunch of other local organizations who I contacted through this opportunity that the Community Engaged Learning Office gave me. So one in particular, which formed this winter, is PCAC, which is the Poughkeepsie Community Action Collaborative. So together, we were very unsatisfied with Poughkeepsie's response to Executive Order 203, which is an executive order calling for police reinvention in New York State. So we decided, well, what if we as community members created what we wanted to see the police become? So after weeks and weeks and months of work, we eventually drafted a 60-page summary of changes we wanted to see in the city, research we did. We conducted a survey in the community, which I got the opportunity to just hand out surveys on the street, which I love doing. And through that, we were able to write what we as all community members want to see in our community. So I actually had the opportunity to write a whole section on my own, and I got to write it on alternatives to calling the police. And the only reason that I could write this is because one of my classes I had taken right before was taught by Jasmine Sabdullah, and it's called Policing the Planet. And in it, she gave us opportunities to think about abolitionist movements we could take. And our projects were to create ways to abolish the police and prisons in our communities. So the one that I took on was making a Poughkeepsie resource pamphlet. And using the same framework, I actually wrote it in and submitted it in the Poughkeepsie, in the PCAC report to the city of Poughkeepsie. So it was really just my academics, which was fueling like side by side with my community activism, which I found really helpful and really astounding. So how this has impacted my future. So I came into Vassar knowing I wanted to be a math major, thinking I just wanted to become a math professor, just study a lot of hard math. But this has completely changed my trajectory. It showed me that I wanted to become a prison studies correlate, which I never expected myself doing. It also led me to this semester conduct statistical research in social justice, kind of combining my academic and social fields into something that I really care about. It also led me to have an opportunity to work with the Center for Community Alternatives this summer, just as a researcher for them. It also gave me the opportunity to create a class on local legal challenges. The CEL, my community fellowship, gave me the opportunity to do that. And then lastly, and very importantly, because of all of these opportunities I had, it led me to create such strong relationships in the city of Poughkeepsie that me and a few other students, or not students, just community members in general, we actually formed our own organization called I Am Citizen, where we work to tell the stories of families who have lost loved ones to police brutality. So I never thought I was going to be here with my life, but the community fellowship program in the CEL office completely changed my academic life trajectory, and I am so happy about it. And is that my last slide? And yeah, lastly, I just want to talk about building community. I think that's what this is all about. And that's the most important thing that we can do. I would not be where I am if it wasn't for community, because community is everything. It's the reason we are all here, because we care about community and we want to build community. And that community can be at Vassar College, it can be in the broader area, but no matter what, I think it's really important that we look at community and always try to build community with those around us. So thank you.
Thank you so much, Elijah. That was absolutely amazing to hear your story, and also Sarah, your story as well. So thank you to all of our panelists who have given us some great insights into the many different ways that students here can engage with social justice and activism, whether that's via the community or via the curriculum, via the Engage Pluralism Initiative, or even through some of the many kind of clubs and organizations that we have here. At this time, if there are any questions that you have, feel free to put those in the question and answer section. I'll start us off. Kevin, you alluded to the Alana Fest during your presentation. Can you tell our kind of attendees, our participants, what is the Alana Fest?
Yeah, absolutely. So pre-COVID times, this was a large outdoor gathering on the residential quad that features our student organizations, their tabling, also community organizations. We bring in performers from the community, not just Poughkeepsie City, but also Kingston and the other surrounding cities. But yeah, it's just a time to enjoy food, music, get to know about student organizations and community organizations, as well as different offices and resources on campus. And it's all students are welcome. And it typically happens in the fall. So hopefully fall 2021, we'll be back out there.
Excellent. And then I'll go back to Elijah and Sarah. Just a question for you all, for our participants who are in the room as well. What made you decide to come to Vassar?
I can go first then. I decided to come to Vassar really for the community. I loved growing up in the Hudson Valley, and I knew I wanted to stay working in the community. My relationships with the students at the River Haven Youth Shelter were really strong and just in the community. And yeah, I just wanted to stay here, and especially Vassar, because I knew as a high school student who would regularly go onto Vassar's campus and talk to Vassar students, that they also wanted to be involved in the community and they wanted to make changes. And I knew that's the environment I needed to be in.
I wanted to come to Vassar because for a lot of reasons. First off, I really appreciated how there basically weren't any requirements. There are very few requirements, and that I would have the opportunity to take classes about things that I was actually interested in, and that the people who I was in classes with were also actually interested in the topic. And everybody who I met at Vassar or like had conversations with during the application process had so many different parts to their identity, and all of those parts complemented each other in a really beautiful way, and they were allowed to, like, you know, pursue all of those different aspects of who they were. People were really nice when I came here, which was really an appealing factor. Yeah, those are pretty much the main two things: nice people, and I could study what I was interested in and be around people who are also really interested in things.
Excellent. Thank you all so much. So this concludes our kind of panel today. Hopefully you have been able to learn a little bit more about what social justice and activism is like here at Vassar. We would love for you to join us. There are many opportunities for you to join us. I'm sure you've been able to see that on our website, but I'm very happy that you were able to join us and learn a little bit more about what makes us who we are as a college. So thank you so much for coming. Thank you to all of our panelists and for the students who came, and have a great night.